I was watching an episode of Foreign Correspondent, which was dealing with how North Korean defectors are actually treated in South Korea, and also what their experience is like after they've defected and escaped the regime. And there was one component of this where a South Korean television show has actually is it's kind of poking fun at the regime by interviewing defectors and sort of bringing to light the kind of life that you can expect being in North Korea, which is obviously not great at all, and and it's called Now on My Way to Meet You, and it's featuring stories about defectors who had made a new life in South Korea. So the reason why I wanted to touch on this is that apart from the fact that there are, sort of documentaries and stories that you can find about North Korea defectors, all that sort of thing online, there's plenty of that. But this was a particularly different angle only because it chose to focus on how North Korean defectors are actually perceived by South Koreans after they've lived there, and that although there may be an improvement in some ways because they've escaped the oppression of the regime, they face a range of other challenges once they get to South Korea, and it's harder for them to integrate than what it might appear, because there might be some natural suspicion on the local populace about, are they really a defector, or is something else going on here?
Yeah, look, I think it must be very difficult to defect, even from your worst circumstance in a country which is ruled in the way that North Korea is. But it's a brave step to take. These are people who are willing to leave behind what they know and move into the unknown. And I think that's what is interesting about this show, and the way that it depicts people that make the transition from North Korea to South Korea. I mean, you can well imagine that if you spent 20 years, maybe longer, 30, living under oppression, then you'd come to the South, and even though everyone perceives you to have freedom, in your own mind there might be a lot of things that you can never quite get your head around. And let's face it, South Korea is a very different place to North Korea. And then on top of that, as you've just pointed out, there's people's attitudes. So this is a really interesting look at culture, and also I think the technology aspect, because that's a big part of, I guess, the Western or advanced sort of democracies, is how these things are perceived, how this information's passed around, and of course, that sort of visibility or interaction of society through social and indeed just digital sort of apps, is something that you probably wouldn't have in North Korea. So at the very least, anyone who comes across that border has a lot of catching up to do, and a lot of work to do mentally and emotionally to integrate as well.
And I guess the other interesting aspect for me was this focus on younger people getting more access to what would be considered contraband material in North Korea. So the idea that, for instance, just something as simple as a soap opera that's on TV that would be, cheesy for us to watch or whatever, that's a window into, and it's actually mentioned, it was actually mentioned in this documentary that they can be actually a window into life in the West, or even, in many other countries. And that's actually a mind-blowing experience for them, and that more and more are getting access. And and again, it might be a technology thing, whatever, or they're slipping on banning this sort of stuff, but having access to that material, can lead more and more to do this, which it might be an interesting challenge. There is a reference there that Kim Jong-un is actually watching this particular show that we mentioned before, for obvious reasons, because from his perspective, I'm sure it's a national security threat.
Oh yeah, look, I'm sure it is. You make an interesting point. The fact that they can't block, a lot of the sort of more popular culture aspects, and these things do give us a window into the world. I mean, just imagine for me what it was like to go to California and find out Bold and Beautiful actually was real. and yeah, I guess for everyone in North Korea that gets their hands on a copy of a soap opera that depicts life somewhere else where everyone's glamorous and happy, and apart from the challenges in their life that come up every day, it's an insight into a world that at least resembles maybe what the world is like on this side of the border. And I think that those sorts of things, must really trouble the regime in North Korea.